Okay, we're live. All good.
Hello,
How's everyone going? It's Chris here and
and Fraser. How you going?
Fraser hiding somewhere on screen. You can't see Fraser's face, so he's around.
Maybe if you look hard enough, you might find my hidden webcam.
maybe he's the guy standing in the middle of that screen there, the little orange fella.
Mm.
Maybe that's Fraser. How are we doing, Fraser? It's been a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's been busy, productive
Mm-hmm.
between doing this business class I'm doing and getting more work done on the game, but rewarding as well. So far, things are going in the positive direction, so that's encouraging.
Nice. So tell us, actually, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing? Because you obviously game design is what you're wanting to do. But what are you doing? What's this business course, and is it what are you getting out of it?
Yes. So I'm doing a self-employment assistance program. I'll end up with a Cert 3 in small business and entrepreneurship. I think
Mm-hmm.
some of those words might not be quite right, but the general vibe is there. And
Cool.
essentially, over 6 weeks, you come up with a business idea, and then fill out a business plan and a financial plan, and you can use that to take it to investors and anyone and try and sort of show you're serious about whatever business idea you have. Obviously, for me, um, game design is what I want to do,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt like the easiest way to get started on that was to do an indie game. And so, yeah, making it official, having my own actual indie studio, just opens up uh, easier access to government funds and resources. And yeah, so that's
Cool.
it's a lot of marketing at the moment, which means it's a lot of
My favorite.
taking stuff I know a lot about from games marketing
Yeah.
and trying to make that fit with this very classic sort of business plan.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the stuff they're talking about is physical products or services, and
Yeah.
marketing through XYZ. And I'm like, okay, well, for a game, this is what I need to do. But in a couple of weeks, I'll be doing the financial stuff, and the legal stuff. So that should be, a good excuse, a good force for me to go and actually get my head around that. So looking forward to it.
Okay. Yeah. The business side. I did warn you,
Mm.
didn't I? I warned everybody.
Yeah.
The business side. It's because look, games are a business. Games are art, and games are a business, and it's the it's a real challenge that we have in this industry. All the creative industries are the same. So you kind of have to make money, and this is why so many game studios right now are either shedding people or are closing down. It's purely financial. So you can't ignore the business side unless you want to work in a bank instead of actually doing game design or work somewhere else. A bank is, just an example. Um, yeah, the business side, unfortunately, is an important side if you want to make a living out of the whole thing. So, yeah, cool. So I'm glad to hear you're enjoying it.
Yeah, well, it's a change of pace. I think by the end of these 6 weeks, I'll be like desperate to just be doing game stuff, and I do fear, running my own indie studio. What that means, a lot of my time is going to be spent looking at all this planning. But I don't know I don't know
Yeah.
if it gives me the ability to work on the games that I want to work on,
Yep.
so be it.
Yeah. 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 Well, again, this is one of the reasons why I'm a solo indie developer, working, doing, teaching game design as well. So that kind of keeps the money coming through the door and keeps the pressure off having to make money out of games. So it's makes I don't know makes life a bit easier, I guess. If you don't have to make money, I kind of don't necessarily expect to make money off the games that I'm making, particularly at the moment. So yeah, but it's nice to make money.
Mhm.
It is
Sure
nice to
helps
make
making the
money.
next game.
It absolutely does. Absolutely does. So, okay. So, a couple of things we're going to go through today. Should we look first up at what you've been doing with the vehicle stuff? Maybe should we do that first?
Yeah, we can do that. That sounds good to me.
So, let me grab here 1440p, 60 FPS. Goodness me.
Don't get used to it.
Okay. Can I? I can't make that full screen, I think, can I?
I think the closest you can get is almost full screen.
What's the
down
button for
the
almost
right
full
there.
screen? This
When
one?
you hover over it, like the Discord pop out.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. Okay, nice. All right.
Welcome to my test world. It's grown
Okay.
substantially from the default sort of area.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually a small side note before I get into the specific car stuff for the game.
Mm.
Is that I saw in this modeling tab, there's this cube grid function,
Mm-hmm.
which allows you to kind of build things out of grids,
Right,
and extrusion
nice.
and stuff.
Okay, cool.
And yeah, I saw a couple of videos that were like, it's great for prototyping and quick
Yeah.
level design, and I thought that was really interesting. Discard all changes.
Okay, I've never seen that before. So you're teaching me something here.
Yeah,
Nice.
you can even do like these.
Mesh
once you
voxels, yeah.
once you extrude it out, you can select the corners and then
Mhm.
change those. So you can get all sorts of dynamic curves and whatnot. And yeah, it helped me just
Cool.
expand this sort of area really quickly. So
how do we
I'm
get there?
excited to use that.
Just out of interest. So you're gonna go to
So,
modeling mode. Ah.
Yeah, up into modeling, and then and then you select cube grid.
Right. Cool.
And then that gives you the grid. You can do things like changing the scale, and you can drag to select and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I've only just touched the surface of it.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to be using it more, but priorities.
Sure.
But yeah, so last time I think I was stressing a bit about getting the car functional and working. And yeah, so we've managed between Gemma and I to get to a point where we have brought in this is the default car blueprints and stuff from what Unreal provides.
Okay.
We've set up code so that you can possess the vehicle,
Mm-hmm.
and then I've set it to be a manual transmission. So I've also tweaked it so that when you let go of W to accelerate, it drops you back into neutral.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've set up a bunch of input actions down to like 1 through to 5 to change the gears. So if I swap to gear 2, you'll see I'm then in gear 2, and then 3,
Right.
and then 4.
Nice.
And that only happens while in neutral, because part of the game feel, I guess,
Yeah.
for Arvo is the idea of sort of that rocking motion. So when you're accelerating, you're holding W to change gears, you come off W, select your next gear, and then you back on. And so it's that sort of back and forth. There's a lot of tweaking that needs to be done for the numbers, but
Yeah.
I'm hoping this is the sort of base code implemented.
Now, I, if I recall correctly, part of this you were saying is inspired by your own love of driving a manual car. Is that?
Yeah. I don't love a lot of things about driving a manual car, mainly because skill issue. I'm just not good at it. But there is something I feel almost undeniably satisfying about getting a really clean gear shift.
Okay.
And just being able to, nothing dangerous, nothing illegal, but just accelerating really quickly and smoothly up to the legal posted speed limit.
Of course, yes.
And so yeah, it's that sort of. We talked about this in the earlier streams, like trying to get that sort of feeling, that smoothness, and that sort of timing, and sort of simplifying it down and making it work with the inputs that you have when you're sitting at a computer.
So I've got a little bit of a suggestion. When you come to it, you don't obviously not straight away, but because that's your inspiration, maybe think about actually setting up a camera and recording like a session in your car and have a look what it looks like from the camera, and compare that to what you've created in the game and see whether you're getting the same kind of thing. It's always good to compare things to real life, even though you don't actually want real life, but sometimes you can glean some things which might be useful, particularly if that's your inspiration as well. So just a small suggestion.
I don't think that ever would have crossed my mind, so I'm definitely I'm writing it down.
Yeah, definitely recommend doing that. I mean, look, that's not I mean, well, it's part. It's sort of part. Obviously, it's my suggestion, but that's. I remember that comes from the early days of Disney, the Disney animation studios, and Walt Disney actually used to get, like, he really encouraged his animators to use real life. So he would get things into the animation studios, and they would try and copy them, as closely as possible. And that was the difference between, say, just other cartoons and Disney cartoons, was the level of sort of realism and the feel you get from that. So yeah, it's
Yeah, and it's like with all my other references that I have on my computer, that's always something I'm thinking about, is like, comparing what I've got to those references,
mm,
especially narratively and in like art.
hmm
And so yeah, I guess it's just one of those things of like hadn't crossed my mind, but yeah, no, that's I like that. It's a
yeah.
good point.
Yeah. And look, that doesn't take a lot of effort either. All you need to do is set up your phone and and just record it, and then you can compare it, and you might see some useful things.
Hmm.
So okay, so what we're seeing here is the basic, the foundation at the moment.
Yeah, real
This is what you
foundations.
get from Unreal in the out of the box.
Mhm.
Okay, so here's the blueprints. Yep.
Yeah, so the main things I've been working on, I mean, the big one is this gear shifting setup.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, I actually feel quite lucky because I see a lot of older tutorials where adding new inputs can be a bit of a hassle, and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like these new enhanced inputs are just they make sense to me. So
It's made a lot of
really
difference. Yeah.
simply, just made those and then added them to the I forget the name of the actual blueprint document
Mm-hmm.
a bit, and just yeah bound them 1 through 5 for the gears 1 through 5. I added a couple variables in here, namely the throttle and the selected gear. So the
Mm-hmm.
idea being that you should only be able to change the gear when you're in neutral. Um, and so the way that works is uh, when the throttle input, which is the W, is pressed, setting throttle to true, obviously when it's pressed, and false when it's released,
Mm-hmm.
and then either setting the gear to neutral, so 0 when it's released, and setting it back to this selected gear variable when it's engaged.
Right.
And so that selected gear variable is what's changing here, depending on the gear that's selected. Knowing
Cool.
my approach to coding, there's going to be a bunch of edge cases that I haven't found yet, but that's what the playtesting's for. And I've got a
Absolutely.
little section in the Discord that's for bug lists, so anything I find, I'll go and work through. But the core is there and it works, and it's what I'm looking for.
Excuse me. Cool. Okay. So what's next? What's
Otherwise,
next with this? What's the plan?
what's next? I want to get a prototype version of the Active Shift UI.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so Active Shift is going to be dependent on the gear, and I think the revs. It'll either be the revs or the speed. Speed was easy enough to get out of the vehicle movement component, but revs, I had to go and do some research to find it's tied to this chaos wheeled vehicle movement component object
Right.
reference.
Yep.
I managed to find it. Thank you to whoever made that thread on Reddit or Unreal forums. So
Uh-huh.
much of it is from there. But yeah, so I found that. So I know nothing about the UI. All the UI stuff uh, is has Gemma has handled in the past, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's one of those sunk cost things now where I'm like, I could go and do all the research and try and figure it out and start from the beginning, or I could just schedule a time with Gemma and work together.
That's that sounds like a better option.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's the same for, this vehicle came with standard UI. And so at the start of the week, I said to Gemma, hey, can you make that turn on and off when we get in and out of the car? Because it's currently just doesn't show up. And they were like, yep, got it. And sure enough, they figured it out for me. So
Cool.
appreciated.
Cool. Sounds good.
But yes, I want to get Gemma's help to make a visual indicator on the UI for the revs so that we can start looking at because right now, I'm saying the gear changing can only happen when you're in neutral, and that only happens when you're off the accelerator. That's half of active shift. The other half is the timing. So when do you start accelerating again?
Right.
And I won't be able to start figuring that out until I can get a visual of the revs or the speed up on there and start going from there.
Okay. Cool. Well, that's one step at a time.
Yep.
So nice.
Yeah, there are plenty of fun little bugs that I encountered. Things like when you're driving, what these ramps are for specifically. By default, the car has some sort of stopping function. So if you drive on a slope and then stop, it would hold on the slope, like perfectly still, and you could get out and it'd stay there.
Nice. I wish all cars did that.
Yeah, right? I had to go do some research to figure out how to turn that off. So you can see on this slope, it does hang out. There's a function that we could only access through this console command to get it to tweak that balance.
That's always fun. That's always fun.
And then another one I found where there's this vehicle sleep property in here. And so I'm not super sure what that's for, the sleep threshold.
Sleep, I think, is to do with the physics system. I'm kind of assuming here. So with physics, you'll often send objects to sleep if you don't need to calculate physics for them, because it's kind of expensive. So I would imagine that's something to do with turning the physics off, because the car would be, or the vehicles would be, fairly heavy with their physics calculations. So exactly what the threshold means, I'm not sure though, but it would be something to do with that.
Yeah, that was my assumption as
what
well.
What was the thing there?
Not super helpful. Option to apply some aggressive sleep logic. Large number is more aggressive. 0 disables.
Oh, lovely. Very helpful.
Really,
okay.
Really clarifies that.
Yeah. Okay.
The issue that I've had with it is when the car is at a standstill, completely motionless. Obviously, it goes to sleep. That's good because physics, computations, whatnot. But it also stops it from receiving inputs, so you can't change gear once it's gone to sleep.
Right.
And I think there was a couple other little things that it just.
So you've disabled.
Just ignored it.
You've disabled.
So
we've okay.
Disabled that with a console command, which. I mean, I'll have to keep an eye on the performance, especially once we start interacting with the physics objects more. But yeah, lots of little things that were like, there's like, you would assume in here it says 0 disables, so you could set that to 0, it would be disabled. Didn't work.
Hey, don't assume those things will always do what they say.
So having to do that through console commands, that's fun.
That's alright. I mean, at least you can do it.
And then the other thing we've got going on is a possession system.
Right.
So it's got a bounding box. If the player's inside of it, they can press E and they possess it. That all works really well. Just had to add the input actions to the player controller, and then it was really smooth. The major issue that I've found so far is getting the player back out. Currently, it's just there's an arrow sitting next to the car, and it just plonks the player there, which obviously can cause quite a few issues if the car flips upside down. But
okay.
For now, in the prototype, it's functional enough. In the future, I'll figure out whatever system I need to implement to actually find a good bit of solid ground near the car so the player can teleport.
Okay, yeah. That's an interesting issue. I'd never really thought about that. That sounds like it's going to be something kind of interesting to pursue over the coming weeks, months, years.
It crossed my mind when I put it in, and I was like, this will work. And then I'm like, but if I flip over, and then earlier today I flipped the car and I got out, and the camera was wedged in an awkward angle. And then another time I got out and I started clipping through the floor, and I was like, this is not a long-term solution to this problem.
No, that's an interesting one. Yeah. If I think of any nice, elegant solutions, I'll let you know.
I appreciate it. Oh, that's right. The sleep issue. I don't know how well you can see, but I've got the RPMs flashing up in the top corner.
Mm-hmm.
The car wouldn't fall all the way back to idle if it fell asleep. It would cap the revs at some awkward number, and that was just really bothering me. So that's part of that issue. And then the last little bit is Gemma did a lot of work on the physics, being able to pick up physics
Picking things
objects
up
and
because
move them.
you're trying to stack packages, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So a final version will look like stacking stuff, but we're still getting to grips with it. You know, being able to push the car
Can you
around is one of
drive
the
like
worst.
that? Can you put that on
Put
and
it
actually
on
drive at the moment?
and not try it.
Oh, there we go. Oh, look at. Oh, it slips off. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So there's plenty of work to do, but it's all nothing has gone catastrophically wrong. Nothing says
good
you know,
first
it's
step.
impossible yet.
Good
So
first
yeah,
step.
feeling pretty good.
Nice. Cool. All right. Fantastic. Good to see. So, let me come out of that. Yeah, cool. Just go. Go. All right. So that's good to see. We got time. Yeah, good. Okay. So what what I put together today, I've had some interest come in about exactly what this sort of model is that I'm doing. This is the sort of model / language that I'm talking about, and that we're sort of going through. And we haven't really gone through it. You and I haven't really gone through it. We've sort of touched on it and sort of talked about different aspects of it. But I thought, well, now that I've finished teaching for the trimester, I've got a couple of weeks off. I can actually, I've got a bit of time to put together some slides, and we can go through and have a bit of a chat about it. So, planning to put together a just sort of a just me going through it. But I thought it'd be really good to have a chat as well with you, so you can throw back, and we've had a bit of experience with it, so you can throw back any questions that I might take for granted, but other people may find, completely obtuse. It's always a possibility. So let's do. I don't know how long this is going to take, but I think it's probably good to get this overall view of what we're actually trying to do. So there is this model that I've created. I've been doing a PhD for a long time. So it's taken me years to sort of put this together. It might seem fairly simple from the top, but it's actually quite complicated. Or the process of creating has been quite complicated. So I'll make a start, and Fraser, if you've got questions and stuff, if anything doesn't make sense, what I'm actually going to ask you to do is to is to certainly ask any of those questions that come up.
Okay.
Because assume, if anyone else is watching this, like, they're not going to know either. In fact, they'll probably know even less than you. So if you don't understand something, then guaranteed, they're not going to understand it either. So I've called this Game Design 101, just for lack of a better name. This is the sort of first thing that we're going to do. And there's going to be more of these as we go into more depth, because we start at the highest level and we sort of then go down to the detail level. So, as we know, game designers are designing player experiences. That's essentially the approach that I'm taking. There's a lot of discussion about this in the sort of game design area, but essentially, if we consider we're designing player experiences, we're sort of coming from the same level. So this is the diagram. We've got our player on the left-hand side. The player interacts with the game and then has some sort of player experience. So hopefully this is kind of very straightforward, and it's pretty self-explanatory. So what we're interested in is what the experience is that the player is having when they are playing our game. This is from a design point of view. So the issue, or the problem, is that the game development team, who we're working with, is actually developing a pretty large and complex piece of software, Fraser, as you just demonstrated. I know you're doing both the design and development, but you can kind of see that there is quite a lot of work on the software side. And that involves code. It can be C++, C Sharp, blueprints, depending what game engine you're using. You've also got story in there as well. So there's narrative, there's dialogue, there's characters, there's all sorts of stuff. And of course we have art assets as well, which art assets, we include both visual and auditory art assets in that heading there. So, both the visual style and sound and music in those as well. So I've got all that, and what the question is, the game development team needs something at this kind of level of detail to use if they're going to be actually able to develop the vision that you have, the sort of creative vision that you might be working as a solo designer, or you might have a small team of designers. So once you've done your design, once you've done your your pre-production, what are you going to give your development team so that they can actually create the game that you have the vision for? So this is Confluence. It's a type of wiki done by Atlassian, so you might be familiar with this sort of thing. Left-hand side, we've got this sort of hierarchical list of different things up here, and then we've got other things down here: avatar, game world, game characters, etc., etc. And we've got information down here. We've got the game details, genre, theme, etc., etc. So the question is, how do we get from this very, very high level? As a designer, you've got this creative vision. And that's fantastic. Creative vision, that's exactly what we want. If you don't have a creative vision, how are you going to create? How are you going to create it? But how do you go from this point, this highest point, to having something like this that you can give your development team, where it's very, very explicit in many ways as to what you're wanting, what you're expecting. So the question, how do we get from that subjective qualities of player experience to what we need is a very detailed description suitable for the development team? And that's, I guess, the question that we are looking, or that I'm looking to answer. So you can seamlessly go through from that high level right down to a level where programmers can get the information they need to create the sort of player experience. So really, first place we start is at top level. So the relationship between the player and the game. Maybe I should pause there, Fraser. Do you have any questions as yet?
I think it's all making sense. It's no, I think you kind of I have questions, but you've addressed them as questions. So I'm like, I understand that you will get there.
Okay, cool. So the first thing we're going to look at today is the top level, the relationship between the player and the game. And a lot of this is where we've been at, what we've been doing over the last, goodness me, it's what been, I think this is the fourth stream we've had on this. So something fifth, like that, maybe? Fourth, fifth. So this is kind of what we've been focusing on, and we haven't got any further yet. So anyway, we're looking at this top level relationship, which is the one you really want to have as clearly defined as possible. So if we come down here, we've got, again, the player and the game. And first up, we kind of split these into two different types of relationships. And it's interesting, we talk about relationships, and that's kind of, I think that word relationship is probably indicative of the type of mindset we need to have when it comes to designing these games. So we're not talking about code, we're not talking about technology, we're talking about relationships. And relationships are to do with psychology, they're to do with sociology. They're sort of touchy-feely kind of things. We're not talking about hard and fast types of things. We're talking about relationships. We're talking about human psyche, human emotions and stuff. We've got two specific relationships there. First is the personal relationship. And then there's the functional relationship. And of course we have the player experience. So the player experience sort of comes out of these relationships that they have. So first up, the functional relationship is pretty simple. It's essentially the input-output between the player and the game. So, an input can be just a mouse and keyboard, Output can be display and speakers if you're on a PC, for instance. If you're on another device, it's like a console. So the input might be the controller, the output might be the display and speakers. Now the functional relationship can potentially sort of go a little bit deeper. So when we're talking also about the mechanics, in fact, Fraser, we're just looking at what you're doing with the car. Some of that stuff you might also put under functional relationship because, you know, for instance, if there's, you know, timing and things that you've got coded into your input. So if the player has to hit a certain key at a particular time, then that sort of code also would really come under the functional relationship as well. Anything that's sort of purely I/O related comes under that sort of functional relationship. And I don't think this is very complicated. I think we understand a lot about functional relationships. When it comes to games, we understand how the hardware works. The I/O, all that stuff has been dealt with for many, many years. We're not, this is not a mystery. This stuff's not a mystery to us at all. So it's mostly the input output, but it can also be partly part of the code as well. Now, when it comes to the personal relationships though, and I have through the work we've been doing together, Fraser, I've actually refined this a little bit, you'll see. So personal relationships, number one is emotion. Number two, I've got there's mind, mental state. Number three is meaningfulness. And number four is social interaction. And we have talked about those. So emotion is the way that the player is feeling. And we've talked about a couple of different models we've looked at there. So there's the PAD model, pleasure, arousal, and dominance model, which I really like. I think that's a really interesting model. There's been some work done on how that connects with the mental state. So there's been some research done on sort of how the PAD model connects with the flow state, for instance, and how to get people into a flow state using that sort of stuff. And this sort of research tends to be done using like ECG monitors and things like that. So the mind mental state, I'm not sure whether we can combine those together, but I think it's kind of easier keeping emotion and the mental state separately, because it's kind of easy to differentiate those two. So the next one is meaningfulness. That's particularly around stories, the most obvious thing, so the narrative part. Can also be more. Particularly maybe if you have some sort of maybe educational games. So the meaningfulness aspect may, if you're doing say educational games, or if you're trying to convey something more in your games, then you can sort of mean those things. It can be more explicit for an educational game, for instance, or more implicit for something a little bit more subtle. And the final one, social interaction, is about interacting with other people. So that's specifically for multiplayer games, which you're not doing a multiplayer game, so it doesn't really relate. But if you're doing a multiplayer game, that would be part of that. So yeah, go for it.
I'm just thinking about those personal relationship aspects.
These ones here,
Yep. And I guess, are these two-way in your sort of understanding of these? Like,
no.
No. Oh, okay.
No. So this is that's a fair question. Although how would it be two-way? Maybe what's your?
I guess if I think about the functional relationship,
Mm-hmm.
the player gives the inputs and the software gives the outputs. So that's sort of that back and forth.
Yeah.
And in here, I was thinking about it, and I'm like, I guess the main thing I see is it's like you could have the individuals, the player's emotional response to it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I guess there's like an intended emotional response that the game is trying to output.
Well, of course.
I feel like
yes,
it's a little more obscure in that one, but I think about things like the meaningfulness,
mm-hmm.
Where it's like, and I guess that's that classic sort of discussion and argument about sort of like the death of the author, right? Where it's like, you might make the game with an intended meaning behind it, but players might take it and get a different meaningfulness.
Of course.
So
of course.
yeah, it's like, do we prioritize either of those over the other in this sort of model?
Well, of course, this is about game design. So at the end of the day, whatever we're talking about here is, as designers, if we're designing a game, is our intention, is what we want to put into the game. What the player takes out of it, that, as I think, as you know, what you rightly said there, that is up to the player. It's up to the situation the player is in at the time. It's up to the player's sort of emotional, mental state. You know, if they're sort of going through, you know, a situation of grief, they might have a very different experience than if they're going through a situation of, you know, joy and elation. So we can't control that.
Yeah.
But absolutely, that is correct.
I guess we could measure sort of our effectiveness of communicating these things by the player's response. You know, if they're feeling the emotions we wanted them to feel, or they're understanding the meaning that we wanted to put in, then
Ooh, I would never say that you failed because a player has a different experience than the one you intended. I mean, I think if the player has a compelling experience, regardless of what that is, then you've probably succeeded. Yeah. I would never say that there's a... Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether you were necessarily saying that, but I think there's a kind of an implicit idea that if the player doesn't feel what you're intending, then that's a failure. But I think it's only a failure if the player walks away from your game and never comes back and doesn't want to play it anymore.
Sure.
That's
I think
the failure.
I may be seeing it sort of on the flip side, where it's like, you know, if we are putting energy and resources and we make assumptions, or, you know, we test, well, that's it, right? We test to see if the things we are designing are creating the response that we're looking for.
Yeah. For our target audience. For our target audience. Don't forget target audience and all this sort of stuff as well. Because of course, you know, if you test a kid's game on an adult, you might find that doesn't work. So you need to keep in mind target audience, and it's from, I guess you'd say it's for most of your target audience should find it compelling in some way. Yeah. And
the other little thing I wanted to touch on before I get back to
no, good.
The social interaction, you know, you explicitly state the multiplayer being the sort of key there.
Yeah.
But do you see it incorporating sort of social interactions outside of the game? I'm thinking specifically when Elden Ring came out, and there was a lot of people talking online, but also face to face. You know, did you go here yet?
That's the meta. That's the meta stuff. Yeah, that's kind of outside of the model. What I'm focusing on here, I'm not even really interested in the menu system and stuff like that. I'm only interested in what's happening in the game. What you're talking about is obviously it's important, but that's kind of the meta game, and what happens sort of outside. That's kind of more, I guess. You know, you've got your business and marketing side. You've got your community managers. That's kind of more that's what was happening around the game. So that's not. I'm not saying it's not important, but that's not what this model is focusing on. It's focusing on the design of the game specifically.
Got it.
Easy. Yeah. Cool. Anything else?
Nope. No? Sorry, I just had a big mouthful of tea.
Gotcha.
Got me.
All right. So essentially, a little diagram becomes sort of something like this. This is what we're focusing on. And again, I haven't put the functional relationship in there, mostly because we kind of understand them. Not to say it's not important. And like in your game, it's going to be important. So it probably is something that you would put in there. But the personal relationship is the thing that we're, I think, interested in specifically at this point in time. So we've got that. Now, the thing that I realised I'd forgotten, and I came back to over the last couple of weeks, and I was sort of ruminating over this, because we've got the game over here, we've got our relationship, we've got our player, we've got our relationship, we've got our experience, but we're not saying anything about the game at this point. I'm like, why did I leave that out? So this should be here as well. So there should be the game's attributes as well. So genre, theme, art, and story are the sort of high level headings we've got here, and they kind of expand. So we've got genre includes. Remember, I had time and space sitting there, and I was like, it's there, but it's only there because I put it somewhere else. So time and space really does fit under genre. So time and space is like the size of the world. So a top-down game compared to like a first-person sort of one-on-one type game is there, and also time. Sometimes you have what was it, turn-based combat in that latest Clair Obscura. Was it Clair Obscura? Something like the 33. I can't remember the name of it now. One of the latest games to come out, which is a turn-based combat system. But then also the gameplay. So within that, sort of the gameplay. So that sort of fits under the genre there. The theme's a little harder to describe. You may be able to describe the theme better than I can, Fraser. How would you describe the concept of theme when it comes to games?
Yeah, I think it's.
I just throw you with that one.
That's a tough one. It's tough because I'm like, a lot of my go-to pools for theme. I looked up to try and collect my thoughts, and then I looked back at the slide, and I'm like, well, no, I was going to say it's kind of like a collection of genre, art, and story, but there is
the theme. What about, say, a game I think we're both familiar with, The Last of Us? What's the theme of that game?
It depends how you interpret it. I mean, yeah.
Okay, look, maybe we'll go into this. Maybe this is a good one. Maybe we'll spend some time going into this as well, what the theme is. Jesse Schell spends a lot of time talking about theme in his book. Was it Lenses of Gameplay Design? And also theme is a big thing. Theme is a big theme when you're talking about doing things like script writing. So the theme is the essence of the story. It's not the story itself. And the theme is quite often like subtext. It's something that's underneath the surface, but it informs what's going on. Usually involves like change. So there's particular themes that are like really quite popular at particular times.
Do you know what would have been a good response from me when you first asked is giving the examples that Gemma and I came up with for Arvo.
Sure.
Because that was some stuff we did with our narrative. So one of our core pillars is found family. And that ties heavily into community. I mentioned a lot when we were talking about it last, but we settled on more of that found family sort of thing. So starting as a stranger, being accepted into the community, and that sort of general, the family nature of that, where you gain enough trust and you trust everyone else enough that there's a lot of leeway, and you sort of stick up for each other. And then the other one we have is like the straight man, sort of the old comedy trope. So the idea being that the player character is going to be the portal for the player into this world that's full of all these crazy, strange, daft NPCs. So those are the themes that we're working on. And when you put it like that, I'm like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense now. I got it.
yeah, cool. So other common themes like redemption is a very common theme. So I think if we go back to The Last of Us, if you remember the beginning of The Last of Us was Joel lost his daughter, was killed. And so that sort of set things up where there was his failure at protecting his daughter. And then you go into his relationship with Ellie. It is Ellie. That was him. Yeah, that's what I would have said. His relationship with Ellie, and basically it's that whole journey of redemption where he has to sort of face what happened. Ellie is a young girl about the same age as his daughter was at the time, and he has to protect her and eventually redeems himself in a way at the end when he goes and kills everyone in the hospital. I wasn't very comfortable in that scene, to be honest, when I was killing all those people. But
It's interesting how the theme can be warped depending on sort of the player's interpretation. I
hmm
think The Last of Us is such a good example of that. You know, with The Last of Us 2 being basically a direct exploration of that theme, and
hmm
then sort of how true it was, and how people can interpret it differently. So
hmm hmm
yeah, it. I can see why having this sort of nailed down is important, because it can
yeah,
get
yeah.
really out of control really fast if you're not careful.
If you have a strong theme, it informs many more. You could almost say all your decisions throughout the design process. So if you know what your theme is, then you can always refer back to the theme when you come up to with questions, sort of from a design point of view.
Yeah.
So very important. Yeah, we might go through into theme. I think that might be a really good idea. How you come up with a theme and things like that. So the third one, art. Again, I've sort of put visual design, and audio design, and music under um, uh, the art heading there. I mean, I think these are the two things that sort of set the mood, the feeling, etc. And then there's also the story. So these are the game attributes, and of course these sort of story. You're going to start going to story. I mean, you've got the whole hero's journey, the three act structure. If you're using things like that, you've got your characters and everything sit under there as well. And of course they're not necessarily separate. So your art is going to be linked very much to your story. So you're going to have art for characters, for different things within the story, and the theme and the story fit together really well. And then your genre. So this is the interesting one. We did a video on this a few weeks ago about that Ludo narrative dissonance. So marrying the genre, the gameplay, with the rest of it, theme, the art, and the story is part of the challenge. Getting that right. So they are the attributes of the game, if you like. We all good? Questions?
Yeah.
Comments?
When with story, do you consider the mode through which the story is told under that as well? I mean, the classic example being like environmental story versus whether it's dialogue or like From Software style item descriptions.
So
If
that
the
would
way
be
the
where
story's told.
that would be really where the art. So the art
Okay.
art is the art is telling the story. So
Yep.
yeah. I mean that they're definitely all intertwined. They're not necessarily exactly separate from each other. They
For sure.
they interact. They support each other. They should be a kind of a whole. But of course, yeah, when you're developing the whole thing, you need to sort of consider each of those independently. Also,
Yeah, it's like each one is separate, but you can't build one fully without building the others at the same time.
yeah. Although you might start with a story. I mean, I guess films and TV start with a good script. So, but then again, where do you have to start? You could start with some art, with an art, idea of art style. You might start with a genre. You can start wherever you like, I guess. And you just got to do it well.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe my brain doesn't work the same way. I feel like if I think about theme, art, or story, that I can only think of an idea that is intertwined with the others. Genre is probably the only sort of attribute where I could just pick a genre out of the hat and then start building from there. But yeah, I don't know. My brain just they're very intertwined. That might.
Oh no, I think
I
you're
don't know.
correct. No. Well, although you can have a story with different art. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. You might have the same. I think theme and story are definitely connected, very strongly connected. The art, for instance, if you think of the number of times a Shakespearean play has been done in a modern setting using modern props, and I mean that's really taking the art, same story, the same theme, but putting it into a modern setting is kind of essentially changing the art and whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, I might need to do some sort of mental exercises to start.
Look, it's an
expanding my,
interesting area, I think, and there's some interesting questions to ask about that. But anyway, we're not going to answer them now. So,
No.
yeah. Anything else?
No. That's all good. Yeah,
Cool.
I've got it. Locking it
Okay.
in.
So essentially, there's the sort of highest level. Turns out to be sort of, I guess, this sort of diagram here where we've got the game with its attributes. We have the player. We have the personal relationship there, and the player experience, and they all kind of fit together to create that player experience. So this is the highest level. This is sort of what we should be sort of thinking about. So that's the first part. That's the highest level. Then there's the questions and the next level. I'm just wondering how many. We've got a few slides to go. Yeah. Again for time. We've got about another half an hour, 40 minutes to go. So you're happy to keep going through this?
Yeah, I'm happy to push on.
All right. So up until now, we've kind of been through with Arvo. We've talked about the emotion. I think we've talked about the mind and mental state and the meaningfulness to a degree. Am I correct in saying that? And we've gone through as well the genre. To have the genre, you've spoken about the theme, art to a degree, and we did talk about story last time. But I think that was one of the ones you said you were going to go away and do some expanding on the story. Did you manage to do that?
We're making some progress. I mean, the themes, getting those down has been really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of plot, I swear we did. Did I highlight that? Was I smart? Yeah, so with the themes down and a lot of your input, we've sort of got like the story in the sense of like the history down,
Mm-hmm.
and we've come up with a sort of plot line that we'd like to follow, which
Mm-hmm.
sort of leans into leans heavily into the found family theme. Essentially, you know, the player being somewhat responsible for the NPCs being in the state they're in, and then sort of trying to make it up to them by doing these deliveries.
Are you showing something on the whiteboard at the moment?
This is in my private whiteboard.
Oh, okay. So you don't want to share it with us?
I'm not sure how much I exactly do.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
I just, yeah, maybe in the future once it's more understood. But yeah,
Yep.
generally
Yeah,
the general
yeah.
plot is player is responsible, which helps motivate them to do all these delivery tasks to try and make it up to the NPCs.
Mm-hmm.
Only for some sort of climax to occur, which, you know, sort of pits the player against the NPCs, and then it's a question of sort of how far do we want to push that. Sort of determines the ending, right? Like if you push it really far, then that sort of character would be excommunicated from the family and sort of, you know, unable to redeem themselves or be accepted. If you don't push it as far, you can sort of have that redemption moment where they're, you know, have formed a strong enough sort of found family connection to reintroduce them. So
Okay.
that's sort of where the story's at.
Okay. Cool. All right. So we've kind of covered this so far. This is where we've got to. Yeah. Maybe not
Yep.
perfectly, but we've kind of covered pretty much all of this at this point
Yes,
in time.
there's bits in every box, I think.
Yeah. And in fact, we may come back and fill in parts of these things that become more obvious when we go sort of down a little bit deeper. That's kind of what I find is you sort of tend to move into depth and you think, oh, okay, that relates back to the sort of high level things sometimes, and you sort of come back and fill in some of those boxes. So that's all good. So the next question is, we've got this game here, but what is actually in this game thing? So how are we thinking about what is actually in the game itself? So kind of what we've got here. So this is the next level down. We still have our player. We always have our player. And then the game. And you can see within that, we've got some sort of fairly high level sort of headings there as well. So the avatar, I'll talk about that in just a second. Game characters and the game world. So once we've established sort of these things, or have at least sort of sketched them out, then we can kind of start coming down and diving into these more specific parts of the game. So the first one, and perhaps you could say the most important, is the player's relationship with the avatar. So for those of you who don't know what an avatar is, and so an avatar is basically a digital character or representation that the player controls within the game world, serves as the player's identity, allows them to interact with the environment, complete objectives, and experience the story from a personal perspective. So also, avatars can be highly customizable, not always, but can be, reflecting the player's choices in things like appearance, abilities, and personality. Any thoughts or questions, Fraser?
I really like the way you've sort of set it out, because I'm immediately thinking of, I've been playing a lot of Watch Dogs recently,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, that game came out like 2012, I think, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, they've got that morality system where if you hit too many civilians with a car, you become, you know, the bad version. If you help people, you become the good version.
Yeah.
So I like the way you sort of describe, you know, it can be very customizable in that sense.
Yep.
And in stark comparison, I think about Yakuza.
Mm-hmm.
I think about Kiryu, who is this, you know, he has this like rock solid, etched in stone set of morals,
Right.
and there's nothing you can do as a player to go against them. You're
Right.
always existing within his sort of moral outline. Versus, yeah, you know, whether it's Watch Dogs or what was the other one? Infamous, I think, where they have that sort of like compass. Yeah, and so it's interesting to see both of those exist in the same space. But yeah, like you say, they can be customizable.
That used to be quite common, I think. There was a time, maybe in the 2000s, when you sort of heard a lot about moral, the moral impact on your moral choices within a game. You know, I don't think I hear so much about that anymore, because you're talking about older games there as well, aren't you?
Yeah.
So we don't necessarily see so much of that.
Oh, what's the... How have I forgotten? The game series Mass Effect. That's... Never played it, but I feel like that was a big part of that as well. If I'm not mistaken.
Again, when the first Mass Effect came out, that's ages ago now.
Yeah.
2011? Something like that.
Oh,
So there
I guess
was...
earlier,
It's interesting. It's interesting. You're sort of seeing these different... what would you call them? Different fashions or different themes that appear in game design. Well, we did talk about this, I think, when we were going through some of the Remedies games. We were talking about those. 2007 was it? Wow, even earlier. I thought it was. Gee, okay. Did we have games back in 2007?
Those trends for sure.
So, yeah, it seems like so long ago now. It's almost, that's 18 years ago. Jeez, Louise. Goodness,
I won't tell you how old I was.
You would have been very young. I know.
Correct.
I know. Yeah, I was not quite so young. So, so that's So Avatar. So the first level, or the first thing we're talking about here is the Avatar. The important thing to realize with the Avatar is, you know, given that number one, digital character representing character or representation the player controls in the game world. There's just things like identity is really important, but also allowing them to interact with the environment, complete objectives, experience the story from a personal perspective. Everything the player does in the game, this relationship here, it directly impacts what happens with everything else in here. So the way they move through the world, the agency they have in the world, even down to the perspective that they're seeing the world in, the view frustum and all that sort of stuff. That's all from the Avatar. And again, you know, the way they deal with, also the game characters, or the way they deal with game characters, same thing. You know, how the Avatar, essentially what's in the Avatar is dictates what they can actually do with game characters. You know, is there friendly fire, for instance? Can you interact with other game characters? Can you tie other game characters up and feed them asset and stuff like that as you can in games like DayZ, for instance. This is all, many of the things that we do from a design point of view are dictated at this level by the avatar and how the avatar can interact with both of these. So it's a very, very important aspect of the game. It's probably the most important. And it's the way that it mediates all the interactions that the player has with game characters and the game world. So, any other thoughts before we move on?
I was trying to think of an example where that didn't apply, but I couldn't think of a single one, so I think it's good.
We are talking of, it's important to say that I am focused on 3D avatar-based games. So, yeah, so that kind of is, with 3D avatar-based games. Where it's not that case, so if you have like RTS games, you don't really have an avatar. God mode type games, Sims games, so Sim City and things like that, you wouldn't have an avatar.
I guess Sims. Yeah, I guess that's stuff. I feel like, I mean, I'm not an RTS player, but isn't there typically like you take the position of some sort of commander or like, you know, figure at the top of the chain? Or
in what type of game are we talking about?
In like RTS games.
Again, I'm not a big RTS player either, but the ones that I have played, basically you have like a god's eye view of everything and you just move everything around. So
yeah,
there's no specific avatar that you have in those games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the games that we're talking about here do have avatars. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. All right. So next one is the game world. Again, the player, you could put the avatar in here because basically the avatar is between those two, but I haven't done that here. But the game world, not surprisingly, refers to the entire virtual environment that surrounds the player's avatar and non-player characters. So this includes landscapes, buildings, objects, weather effects, interactive elements that together create an immersive setting for your gameplay. Also includes, so maybe more less sort of solid things, so visual details, things like lighting, sound, effects, physics, which for your game is obviously going to be an important part of. Believable spaces for players to interact, solving challenges, experiencing the story. So the game world is all of these things. So we need, when it comes to design, we need to remember that, we are creating landscapes, buildings, objects, etc. But at the same time, we need to keep in mind, visual effects, details, lighting, sound, physics. We're also dealing with all that sort of stuff as well. And it provides the space for the players to interact, solve challenges, and experience the story. So that's the game world. Any comments or thoughts?
Sorry, I had a mild heart attack because I think there was some feedback that came through. I'm hoping it was just on my end, but it was very loud.
Oh, really?
Yeah, let me... How do I make sure that didn't happen on stream?
I think all I heard was... It sounded like you brushed your microphone?
That was me throwing my headphones off, yep.
Yeah, that's all I heard.
Oh, clip. Okay. Sorry, bear with me for one moment.
That's all right.
Okay, no, I think we're good.
Something happened in your headphones or something?
I'm not sure. There's been a little bit of popping coming, I think, from your mic.
Shouldn't
through
be.
Discord, but it's not showing up on Twitch. So,
this is my mic here, and it's got a popping guard on it. So, and also I'm talking here, so there shouldn't be.
Oh no, like a static, like an electric pop. So like
really?
Almost like a loose cord or something. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll have to check that.
I was looking back on the clip recording, I didn't hear the loud noise that I heard, or really any of the popping. So I'm like, I don't know. It could be my headphones.
We might need to do I might need to do a technical check through to make sure everything's fine. If there's issues there with some of the technology, hopefully not. But yeah, we all good?
Yeah,
All
yeah,
good?
I think so. It didn't seem to be picked up on stream, so
Okay.
that should be fine.
Okay.
Game world, yeah, it's everything that's not a character, I suppose, in the game.
Pretty much. Yeah, it's not the avatar, not the character.
Yeah, makes sense.
No, cool. And then finally we have game characters. And I mean, obviously you can spend a lot of time on this. Essentially, that's just basically, if you're a single player game, it's just your non-player characters. If it's a multiplayer game, it gets a little bit more complicated, but you've got your other players' avatars in there as well, and your non-player characters. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. That's pretty much it. That's all I want to cover today.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Cool.
I guess for me, I'm just having a moment there of reflecting, and it is interesting how I'm sort of seeing this. You know, you mentioned right at the top that the concept essentially is working from the high level and drilling deeper over time. And so I feel like that's happened a couple of times. And so just now I'm thinking, yeah, game characters make sense. I'm like, wait, what's the context? And then I looked through the notes and I'm thinking, oh yeah, right, this is how the player experience is formed. Part of it's through characters, game world, avatar. What does that mean? Going back up to the personal relationship, the functional relationship. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. All right. Oh, there we go. We've solved game design. That's all done. No problem.
It's all good. Nothing else needs to be done.
Yeah, there are definitely other layers. There's other things that certainly I need to talk about and describe. And yes, there is. Excuse me. There is more to go into. Again, we're trying to get to. Excuse me. This kind of level here. Oh goodness me! Hang on. It's having a bit of a coughing fit there. Wonderful. Hopefully none of that came through. But we're trying to get to this sort of point, where we have a very, well set out idea of what each of these are. And you can see we've got here these high levels. So you've got the avatar, game world, game characters. You also got story. And there's other things here as well, which we haven't touched on yet, like actual player experiences. So, what are they? How do they fit? So we'll be going through some of those also. Yeah. So that's, as I said, that's kind of all we're going to cover today. But what we're going to be going through, since we've pretty much covered, or we've at least touched on all of this with Arvo, so the next thing is to start going through this sort of thing. So we're going to be talking about the avatar, which I had noticed, this had come into my mind previously, that we haven't really talked about as yet, and I haven't seen any concept art of what Mr. Arvo or Mrs. Arvo is going to look like either. So we haven't touched really much of this.
Yeah, that's deliberate.
Well, that's how we've got some time today. I mean, we can start talking about this today. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to. It's something you don't want to.
It's been a big question mark for a while.
Okay.
It just, from so many different aspects, we have been like, are they a human in this town full of robots? Are they a robot? Who are they? Do they speak? Are they, a silent protagonist? Do they have a model, or do we just dodge that at every step we can?
That sounds like the answer, Fraser. That's the easiest answer.
Yeah,
that's the ultimate first person, because ideally, the thing about first person is that you are the the protagonist. You are the person. You are the person in the game world. So if you the least you provide in the way of model, the easier it is for someone to kind of just slip into that role.
Yeah, I've always heard that. Like, I feel like, with games like Portal and Half-Life, being, kind of titans from when I was growing up, that's been what has sort of osmosis into me through growing up before I was actually studying game design. But now, having grown up with that and come out the other side of like a game design course, I'm like, is that the case? I guess I'm in this camp where it's like, I haven't seen the evidence. I wasn't there before silent protagonists were a thing. And so I guess I'm just a little skeptical. I'm like, is that actually more immersive for a player to not have, or to have minimal sort of avatar aspects between them and the game experience?
I'm not sure that it actually matters. I would suggest, particularly first person. Third person may be a bit different. But first person, you can show them the character and what have you. And initially it might make a difference. But I think at the end of the day, most of us who are playing first person games, and I play first person games, I still play them quite a lot. So I think like 7 Days to Die, for instance. Even though there is an avatar there is a character model there, I don't see it in first person. I don't care about it in first person. I am playing the game.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it does make me wonder, like if we had 0 first person assets, how that plays. Because I just looking through my recently played on Steam, and I'm like third person. And then it's like the first, I guess Mirror's Edge actually is a first person in there, and they use their first person assets quite a bit to sort of set the tone for that player experience. The classic in Mirror's Edge 1 being the sort of split toe runner shoe. But also, like that red glove on the hand and the tattoos, especially in the second one. I guess it's something I'm gonna have to bring up to Gemma on Monday when we have our meeting, and sort of I think we'll decide on something then, and so I'll have something to report back for next time.
The easiest and cheapest way is to have no model.
Yeah.
And so if you're on a restricted budget, time and money, then no avatar no character model is not a bad one.
And personally, the last thing I want to be modeling is a humanoid form. I'll model hard surfaces any day of the week, but that sounds like a nightmare personally.
I mean, unless you get someone who is a specific character modeler. Some of the students who are in previous classes have been amazing character modelers. They've done some really good stuff. But unless you're a specific character modeler, it's very much a very niche skill. Yeah.
And I think that's understandable, right? Given humans' capacity and ability to recognize and inherently understand the human form, it's like you can make a lot of things that look close enough to what they're trying to be recognizable. But if you make a human that doesn't quite look human enough, it looks you've gone the wrong direction.
Uncanny Valley stuff, absolutely. Yeah, and you really don't want that. So I mean, I would suggest, given your limited budget, money, time, and budget, and sort of skill set, having no character model would be the best. Keep it simple. Keep it as simple as possible. If you don't need to have it, don't have it.
I like that.
Yeah, cool. So, have you looked talking about the first person character? I did bring up the only example of a first person It's actually a music video. Do you remember I brought this up?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Did you look at it?
Nope. Apologies.
That's fine. I would watch it on the stream, but we'd get copyright strike for it.
Yeah, that would happen very fast.
Yeah. But I guess we could look at it. Could we look at it without the volume? Could we turn the volume right down and just watch the actual video?
I think so.
I wonder if we can.
I think you could. Yeah, I think that should be fine. Especially if you don't full screen it.
We watch the whole thing. Is that gonna?
Watching the whole thing might flag it. If you want to be super safe, I'd probably just jump around and only play it for short bursts.
So that doesn't work because it's important to sort of see it from beginning to end because it's first person. It's really interesting, and I won't spoil it. But you make certain assumptions and things, and a lot of those assumptions, it plays with those sort of assumptions and stuff that you're making. But check it out.
Remind me what it was called because I want to put a link in there.
I don't really want to say it because it's called "Smack My Bitch Up."
That's right. Thank you.
The Prodigy. It's a great song, and I first came across it because my younger sister did a dance to it in her dance class. So I'm like, you danced to what? So I had to go and look at this thing, and I'm like, oh wow, actually it's a good song, but yeah. But the video, the music video, first person, very, very interesting. I have showed it for a couple of my classes a while back. When it comes to first person, it's like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. The whole thing of the avatar and first person, and you can, if you want to, because one of the things that does do strange things sometimes in first person is when you're in that flow of playing, and you are you're not consciously anyone else, and then all of a sudden you hear something like for your character's female or whatever, and gets hurt and makes a female sound of being hurt, and it's like, oh, hang on, what? you just kicked me out of where I was with my in my gameplay because it's sort of something that didn't kind of fit. So there are things that are worth keeping in mind like that. If you want to keep reminding your player of who they're playing, I think there's specific things you'd need to do to keep that way. And I think what you were saying before about faith in Mirror's Edge, I think you were reminded pretty regularly of who you were in that game through cutscenes and other things. Have we still got you there?
Yep, sorry, apologies.
You just wandered off and...
Fully just distracted. The butterfly came in. Yeah, that's interesting. And I guess this is what's interesting me most about what you've been saying with it, is it's like, yeah, there's the two routes, right? And you can either establish who the player is playing as and make sure they're aware of that, at least passively, throughout the playthrough, so that they don't have that sort of dissonance or that break in I don't want to say immersion because it's more like the assumptions that your brain makes subconsciously. So it's either that or what I'm kind of really interested in is completely removing references to the avatar outside of it being the player themselves.
Yep.
I mean, like you said, fewer assets means it's easier to sort of implement.
Absolutely.
But I think it's also there is just something really interesting there of like, I guess it goes back to what I was saying about are silent protagonists like more immersive? It's like, well, if the idea was they were more immersive because they didn't speak for you, well, what if we keep removing references to there being a character between the player and the game, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole area you could play with, to be honest. And there's also issues about is the representation of how important is the representation of the character, so the character model and maybe the sound effects, compared to other things in the game as well. So I'll tell you a story which is really interesting. for me personally, and is definitely relates to this. So this would have been back in maybe 2016, 2017. I think I just started playing Rust, and they brought in. So I don't know whether you know, but the characters in Rust, unlike the avatars we're talking about here, it's quite interesting the differences. So here avatars can be highly customizable, reflecting the player's choices. But in Rust, it's yes, there's differentiation between the avatars, but you don't have any choice over it. You don't have any control over it. It's randomly assigned, and it's linked to your Steam ID. So, and the characters in Rust, well, at that time, I think initially they were only male characters, and they just brought in female characters. Now, don't forget in Rust, when you spawn in on a multiplayer island, you spawn in basically naked with a rock and a torch. So there is nakedness in the game. And so they brought in these female avatars, and of course, who gets a female avatar? So I end up with this female avatar. I didn't even think about it. I didn't really care. Whatever. And I spawned in. So this is the first week or two, I think, of having female avatars. Spawned in this game. Walked up the road. I was naked. I had a rock and a torch. There were some people up the road in front of I think it was in front of some sort of store or something. So I went up, interacted with them, and went inside the store and what have you. Not really thinking anything about anything. And all of a sudden, obviously these players have been there for a little bit longer than me. This young guy, and obviously you also have a voice chat. You're familiar with voice chat. So you can hear people. You can hear people talking around you. So proximity voice chat. And this guy comes up to me, and he's been in the game a little bit longer than I had. He had some gear. He had a gun, whatever. And what did he say? He's like, and my character's female, but like I'm talking in the voice chat like this, and I don't sound very female. I'm not sure you'd mistake my voice for being a female. But this guy comes up and says, "Oh, I like you. You're going to be my girlfriend." I'm just like, what? Is it my deep voice that sort of turns you on, kind of thing? I was just like, God. And I kind of made a bit of a joke of it, and he says, "No, I gotta." And he was obviously, he sounded like he was about maybe 14. He was quite young. I think he was probably I don't think he was from the city. He sounded like he had a bit of an accent, which I would have said was probably from somewhere else, a regional, somewhere in the regions, and you'd be familiar with that as well. You kind of understand the different culture. And he's like, no, you're going to be my girlfriend, otherwise I'm going to shoot you. I'm like, geez. And all of a sudden, what was really interesting, even though I didn't see my avatar, I didn't see what my character, but all of a sudden, this just really, I kind of realized, like, oh yeah, I'm a female naked in this game world. I have absolutely no way to protect myself. I'm just, and this sense of dread hit me all of a sudden. Like, my God, what the hell is going on here? And this guy, really menacing young guy, and he was deadly serious. Like, he was like deadly serious. But the impact that it had was really interesting. And I just logged out. I was like, and it took me half an hour to kind of like to come down from that really sort of menacing experience that I had. So when it comes to avatars and your identity, I think there's, the way other players treat you is an interesting aspect we don't talk about very much.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, that's that's a loaded story. There's a lot being said there. It's I mean, I guess from a game design perspective, where that's a very interesting choice to randomize and lock players into that avatar.
Mm-hmm. It's still the same, by the way. like where are we
Yeah,
now? Like 2025.
especially from the little I know, I'd hazard a guess that Rust probably has a strong male demographic.
You would guess correctly. There are some girls who play, but yeah, there's
Yeah,
a
for
lot
sure.
a lot of dudes. Yes, yes.
Yeah,
A lot
and
of
so like
young, a lot of
this,
young. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe there's a teaching moment in there.
Well, they've also
um,
added different races and stuff now as well, so it's kind of
mm,
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
it's funny. I don't know why I wasn't expecting that. I feel like the chips were on the table for a while there, but it did make me think of Helldivers 2.
Mm.
Um, and there's some parallels, not quite in terms of the social commentary that you could pull from that, but you can have your Helldivers spawn with random feminine or masculine voices,
Oh, okay. Oh,
and it's
really?
just the
Okay.
voices. Like the models are the same,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure if you've played or seen it at all, but for most players of Helldivers, you die a lot. And so when
Right.
you die in the middle of a mission, you have so many reinforcements, and so
Uh huh.
another pod drops down, a new soldier pops out.
Uh huh.
And so the canon in the game is this idea that you're not one person
Mhm.
who's somehow respawning through video game logic. You're playing as individual soldiers. And so
Mhm.
there's this quality to having the random voice set where it really reinforces that subtly. That
Mhm.
idea that the last guy, gone. I'm whoever this person is now, and we'll see
Right.
how many missions they make it through. And so, yeah, going just back to that sort of, um, I guess that's almost the opposite of what I'm thinking about with Arvo. It's like how you can change on the
Yeah.
fly the
Yeah.
player's avatar to reinforce themes or story.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of why I was talking about this. Is on the one hand, yeah, you're trying to sort of include as little as possible potentially, but on the other hand, yeah, I mean, you can have various things in there which will reinforce what people who people believe they are.
Yep.
But like I say, I think one of the biggest things is how people treat you, and
Yeah.
I realize that from that experience. It's like if people treat you in a particular way, that's who the hell you are. You know? It's like that's all there is to it. Even if you're a 6 foot Aussie guy in Rust, I was a petite naked woman, being menaced by this young guy, and it was just really bizarre. Yeah, it can be quite powerful. Can be quite powerful. So we need to keep those sort of things in mind as well.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's a lot of power in there. So, yeah. Anyway, it's about 4:30, so we might have to sort of wrap things up and
Sounds good. Yeah.
finish it up there. Yeah, I think we've. So next week, I'd like to, I guess, begin on this one. So I guess I'm giving you a bit of notice. So we've talked about it a bit this week, but maybe think about talk to Gemma, think about what you want to do with the avatar, how that's going to work, but also the car or the vehicle, how's that going to the vehicle. That's an interesting one for me as well. So the vehicle, in one sense, is potentially going to be an avatar, a different kind of avatar, like a parallel avatar. So we're switching
Yeah.
between
I'll
the
get
two.
some stuff down, and yeah, I'll hopefully have some answers the next time.
Sure. Cool. Alrighty. Well, good. Covered a lot of stuff today. That was fun.
Yeah.
So I'll see you probably next week. We'll do Thursday. Back
Yeah,
to
Thursday should
Thursday.
work.
Does that work?
Yep.
I'm pretty. So I've got 2 more weeks, obviously, of not teaching, and then yeah, I can either do Thursdays and Fridays at the moment. I've got classes on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 3 p.m. So yeah, Thursdays or Fridays works.
Thursdays or Fridays. Yeah.
About 3 o'clock. Alrighty, let's wrap it up there. Thanks everyone. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
All those chats and everything. It's really good to see. So, all right, let's. Where are we? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. See everyone later.